There are a lot of guys waiting in line for me. It was a Wednesday night. We were sitting on the sofa in my apartment in Copacabana, half watching that Paul Rudd movie she loved so much, half scrolling through our phones. The smell of the coffee I had made still lingered in the air. I had just asked her if she still felt the same about us, having sensed a certain distance in the last few days. That's when Mariana turned to me, calm as ever, and dropped that line like a knife through soft flesh. There are a lot of guys waiting in line for me, you know? I remember blinking slowly, unsure if I had heard her right. We had been together for almost 2 years. We had already talked about moving in together, about plans for the future. And now this. It wasn't what she said, but how she said it. No emotion, no hesitation, as if I should be grateful she hadn't left yet, as if I were some temporary placeholder until something better came along. My chest tightened, not with jealousy, but with disappointment. It was as if I had become invisible in my own relationship. The sound of the ceiling fan seemed deafening in that moment. A sip of the already cold coffee in my mug, the silence between us. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shrugged, her eyes still fixed on her phone screen. "Nothing much. I'm just saying I have options." Options. As if she were choosing a dish from a Chipotle menu. As if 2 years together, the nights I stayed up when she was sick, the trips to the Hamptons, the plans for the future, could all be discarded for options. On the TV, the movie continued. Canned laughter filled the room, in total contrast to the ice that was forming between us. I thought of all the times I had given up going out with my friends to be with her. Of the nights I stayed up listening to her talk about her difficult day at the law firm. Of how I rearranged my apartment to make space for her things even though she only spent a few days a week here. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply got up, walked to the bedroom, and closed the door behind me. I lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the traffic on the main avenue outside the half-open window. It was 10 at night and the city was still bustling out there, indifferent to the small collapse happening inside apartment 703. I lay there for a long time, thinking about how we got to this point. About when things started to change. Maybe it was after that company party of hers when she started posting more photos alone. Or maybe when she started canceling our plans at the last minute, always with some work-related excuse. It wasn't about other men. It was about respect, and I had just discovered how little of it was left in her eyes. It was already past midnight when I heard her footsteps in the hallway. She didn't knock. She didn't ask if I was okay. I heard the sound of the TV being turned off, the front door opening and closing, and then nothing. She had left, probably for her own apartment in Greenwich, without a word of explanation. That night, lying alone in the bed we had so often shared, I realized that some wounds are too deep to heal. Some words cannot be taken back, and some lines, once crossed, mark the end of everything you believe to be real. I didn't leave with drama. I left with dignity. The next morning I woke up before my alarm, with that strange feeling of someone who slept without really resting. The summer sun was already streaming through the blinds. For a second, everything seemed normal. Then the memory of the night before came back like a wave. There are a lot of guys waiting in line for me. Mariana's words echoed in my head as I stared at the ceiling. I took a long shower, trying to organize my thoughts. I made some strong coffee the way my grandpa from Wisconsin taught me. I sat on the small balcony and watched the beach traffic. It was early, but the kiosks were already being set up. The morning joggers enjoying the breeze before the suffocating heat that would come at noon. Life went on out there, indifferent to the small earthquake that had devastated my world the night before. I called Chris, my boss at the design agency, and told him I would work from home. He didn't question it. One of the advantages of being a graphic designer for 5 years at the same company. I spent the morning trying to focus on the layouts for the beer campaign I needed to deliver on Friday, but my mind kept returning to the same phrase, the same tone of voice, the same indifference. Around 2 in the afternoon, I made a decision. I took the big suitcase from the closet and started packing my things. Not everything, just the essentials. A few shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, my laptop, my documents, the watch my dad gave me when I graduated from college. Things I would need in the coming days while I decided what to do next. As I folded the clothes, my phone vibrated. It was a message from her. "I'll stop by after work to talk." Not an apology. No acknowledgement of what she had done. Just the assumption that I would be waiting, available, whenever she decided to show up. As always. I didn't reply. I continued packing my bag, organizing what I would take. I separated her keys from my keychain and put them on the coffee table, along with a few things she had left at the apartment over time. A makeup bag, some books, the spare phone charger. At 6 in the afternoon, I heard the key turn in the lock. Mariana came in, looking surprised to see me standing in the living room, suitcase by my side. She was dressed up as always, her hair in a perfect bun, the gray blazer she wore to impress clients at the office, the expensive perfume I had given her for our last anniversary. "What's this?" she asked, pointing to the suitcase. "I'm going to Dan's place for a few days," I replied, mentioning my best friend from college. "I need some space, and I'm tired of fighting for someone who isn't fighting for me." She crossed her arms, that expression I knew well, half surprise, half irritation. "You're overreacting. It was just one sentence." "It wasn't just a sentence, Mari. It was the truth. Your truth. And now it's mine, too." I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I just picked up my suitcase and my laptop bag. As I walked past her toward the door, I smelled her perfume for the last time. "Are you coming back?" she asked, without turning to look at me. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "I don't think so." She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't try to convince me. She just stood there watching as I picked up the last things, checked if I had my wallet, my phone, my headphones. Maybe she thought I would come crawling back. Maybe she didn't care. Either way, her silence told me everything I needed to know. Driving toward the suburbs where Dan lived felt surreal. Part of me wanted to look back, to cling to the idea that we could fix everything. But the truth was, I had been the only one patching holes in a boat she was drilling holes into from the inside, and now finally I was letting it sink without me on board. The traffic was heavy, typical of a late afternoon in the city. I turned on the radio and let the music fill the silence. On the car's dashboard, the GPS indicated 20 minutes until Dan's apartment. 20 minutes until the beginning of a new phase. One I hadn't planned, hadn't wanted, but that now seemed inevitable. When I arrived, Dan didn't ask many questions. He just opened a beer, put the game on TV, and said, "The guest room is yours for as long as you need it." And in that moment, the simplicity of that offer, the absence of judgment, made me realize that there were still people who genuinely cared about me. People for whom I wasn't just an option in a line. Loneliness has a voice, and it doesn't quiet down easily. At first, the silence was peaceful. No arguments, no passive-aggressive sighs, just quiet. Dan's 10th floor apartment had an ocean view that many people would pay a fortune for. In the morning, I woke up to the sun rising over the ocean. At night, the lights of the boardwalk created an almost cinematic scene. Dan worked all day at the construction company and often came home late, so I had the place practically to myself. I filled the space with music. I started listening to those indie rock bands again that Mariana found too loud. I ordered a lot of takeout, especially from that sushi place that made an incredible spicy tuna roll. I took long showers, thinking about everything and nothing at the same time. I told myself I was better off this way, and on some nights I believed it. But on other nights, the silence screamed. I found myself checking my phone for messages that never came. I would catch myself looking at her Instagram, seeing if she had posted something, if she was with someone. A torture I inflicted on myself. Photos of her at bars downtown with her firm's friends, a story at the beach, the cryptic caption, "Moving forward, those who are meant to stay, stay." On those nights I lay awake, wondering if she missed me, or if she was already testing out her line of men. I hated that part. The curiosity, the jealousy, the painful confusion. Still no word from her. Dan asked one night, coming home and finding me on the balcony, beer in hand, staring into space. Nothing. And it's better this way, I replied, trying to convince myself more than him. Look, man, I know it's none of my business, but I think you need to get out a bit. There's a barbecue at Mark's on Saturday, want to go? Mark was another friend from college. Married, small child, stable life. The opposite of what I was living at that moment. I don't know, Dan. I'm not in the mood for parties. It's not a party, it's a barbecue with friends, people who care about you. And there's more. Sarah will be there, that friend of Liz's you thought was cute at Andrew's wedding. Sarah. I vaguely remembered her. Curly hair, easy smile, worked with something related to environmental law. In another life, a life before Mariana, I would have been excited about the possibility. I'll think about it, was all I could manage to say. On Saturday I ended up going. Not because of Sarah or anyone else, but because I needed to reconnect with life. The i.e. barbecue was lively, good music, cold beer, easy conversation. Sarah was really there, and she really was pretty. We talked a little about work, about music, about the last episode of that Netflix show everyone was watching. It was normal, and normal at that moment felt extraordinary. We didn't exchange numbers. I didn't promise to call. I wasn't ready, yet. But for the first time in weeks, I spent hours without thinking about Mariana, without compulsively checking my phone, without feeling that tightness in my chest that had become my constant companion. Over time, I stopped checking. I stopped waiting. I immersed myself in the loneliness until it softened, until I started to feel like a person again, not just someone's plan B. Healing didn't come in waves. It came in whispers, small moments of strength that I barely noticed, until they became louder than the pain. A month after leaving the apartment, I finally decided to get the rest of my things. I arranged with Mariana a time when she would be at work. I didn't want to see her. I didn't trust what I might feel or say if we met face to face. I arrived at the agreed-upon time using the key I hadn't yet returned. The apartment was different, more disheveled than Mariana would normally allow. Some boxes piled in a corner, a smell of prepared food, one of those microwave meals she used to criticize me for eating. I quickly collected the rest of my belongings, clothes I had, left behind some books, the guitar I rarely played, the PlayStation. As I packed everything, I found some of her things mixed in with mine. A lost earring between my books, a pen from her office on my desk, an old note that said, "I love you, don't forget to buy milk." Small fragments of a life that no longer existed. I was almost finished when the door opened. Mariana walked in, looking surprised to find me there despite the agreed-upon time. "I thought you would come later," she said, placing her purse on the sofa. "I'm almost done," I replied, not looking directly at her. An uncomfortable silence hung between us. She looked thinner, with dark circles under her eyes that the expensive makeup couldn't completely hide. "How are you?" she finally asked. "I'm getting by," I answered honestly. "And you?" "Good," she said, but her voice wavered slightly. "Busy with work, that big case I told you about. We're wrapping it up now." I nodded, continuing to pack my things. I didn't ask about the line of men. I didn't ask if she was seeing anyone. It didn't matter anymore. "You..." She hesitated. "Do you think we could talk sometime? Get coffee, I don't know." I looked at her for the first time since she came in. Her eyes, the ones I knew so well for 2 years, looked different, more cautious, less confident. "I don't know, Mari. Not now." She nodded as if she had expected that answer. I closed the last box and started carrying everything to the car. She didn't offer to help, just stood there watching as I made several trips from the apartment to the garage. When I was done, I returned the key. Our fingers touched briefly and I felt nothing. No spark, no pain, no longing. Just nothing. Bills don't flirt. Rent doesn't care how many men are in line. It had been almost 2 months since I had left the apartment. Dan had become not just a friend, but an emotional support I didn't expect to need at 32. I started contributing to the rent, despite his initial protests. It's temporary, I would say, although I didn't know exactly what that meant. It was a normal Thursday, finishing a project in the makeshift home office in the living room, when I got a call from Emily, a mutual friend we had known since college. Emily had always been closer to Mariana than to me, so I was surprised to see her name on the screen. "Hey Matt, how are you doing?" she asked with that carefully casual tone people use when they're about to deliver potentially uncomfortable news. "I'm doing okay, Emily. And you?" "I'm good. Look, I know you guys broke up and I don't want to get involved, but I thought you should know. Mari is going through a tough time." I felt that familiar pang in my chest, part concern, part resentment. What happened? She lost her job at the firm. It seems the partner who hired her left to open his own practice and took other lawyers with him, but not her. It's been a month now. She can't pay the rent by herself. I was silent, processing the information. The apartment in Brooklyn had always been too expensive for one person. We had split the expenses when I lived there, and even then it was tight sometimes. "There's more," Emily continued. "The power was cut off once. She didn't want anyone to know, but she ended up calling me when she needed a place to take a hot shower." I closed my eyes, picturing the apartment in the dark. Mariana had always hated the dark. She slept with that small lamp on, said it was a childhood habit she never outgrew. And that line of men didn't help? The question came out more bitter than I intended. Emily was silent for a moment. "I don't know what you're talking about, but she's not dating anyone. She's just posting some weird things on Instagram about fake love and people who change suddenly. Everyone knows it's about you." I didn't answer. What could I say? That she was the one who said she had men in line? That she was the one who made me feel disposable? What Emily knew was probably only one side of the story, Mariana's side. "Look, I'm not calling to ask for anything," Emily quickly added. "I just thought you should know. You guys were together for a long time." After hanging up, I stared out the window of Dan's apartment. From here you could see the sun setting behind the mountains, painting the sky orange and purple. I thought about Mariana alone in that apartment, trying to figure out the bills, maybe finally understanding that real life isn't like the shows we watch together on Netflix. I won't lie. A part of me felt a kind of silent revenge. She had chosen ego over partnership, fantasy over effort, and now reality had shown up at her door with bills and cut-off notices. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept wondering if I should do something, call her, offer to help. But what would be the purpose? To go back to a relationship where I was just a convenient option? To be the savior when none of the other options showed up? The next day, I transferred some money to her account. It wasn't a lot, but enough to pay the power bill and maybe buy some basic groceries. I didn't leave a message, didn't ask for a confirmation of receipt. It wasn't an open door for reconciliation. It was just the gesture of someone who had once cared. I never knew if she understood that. I never asked if the money helped. A few weeks later, I saw on Instagram that she had gotten a new job at a smaller but seemingly stable firm. Her posts had changed. Fewer vague motivational quotes, more day-to-day photos. A new haircut, brunch with friends, life moving on. I never celebrated her failure, but I didn't rescue her either. I wasn't her lesson to avoid. I was the one who had loved her unconditionally, and when that love was no longer enough, I left. What she did with that absence was no longer my business. Weeks later, I ran into Emily at a happy hour downtown. She was with a group of friends. I was with some colleagues from the agency. We greeted each other politely, but there was something in the air, a kind of shared discomfort. "Thanks for helping Mari," she said when we met at the bar to order drinks. "She doesn't know I'm the one who told you. I don't think she even knows it was you who sent the money." "It's okay," I replied. "How is she?" "Better. The new job pays less, but she seems more at peace. I guess sometimes we need to fall to understand some things." I nodded, thinking that I had also fallen in a way, and I was also starting to understand some things. "What about you?" she asked. "Still in the suburbs?" "For now. I'm looking for a place of my own." "It's good to see you moving on," she said with a sincere smile. "You both deserved better than what you had together." Maybe she was right. Maybe relationships aren't just about loving someone, but about how that love manifests itself day to day. In the small decisions, in the words chosen, in moments of vulnerability. I raised my glass in a silent toast and went back to my friends, leaving behind not just Emily, but also the last remnant of responsibility I still felt for Mariana. She was an adult with her own choices, just like me, and now we were both dealing with the consequences of those choices, for better or for worse. Some victories don't come with applause. After 3 months of living with Dan, I finally found a place of my own. A small apartment in Brooklyn, nothing luxurious, but with a view of the skyline that made every cent of the rent worth it. 2 bedrooms, one for sleeping, another I turned into an office for the freelance work I started to pick up, in addition to my full-time job at the agency. The move was simple. I didn't have a lot of stuff. Some clothes, my computer, books, the guitar I started playing again after years. Dan helped me with the boxes, and at the end of the day, we ordered a pizza and drank some beers sitting on the floor of the empty living room, toasting to the new phase. "Dude, you seem different," he commented, between sips. "What do you mean?" "I don't know how to explain it. Lighter, maybe. Less anxious?" I thought about it while chewing on a piece of pizza. He was right. Something had changed, not just around me, but inside me. It didn't happen overnight. It was gradual, almost imperceptible, like a plant growing. You don't see the movement, but one day you notice it's bigger. I started cooking more, something I always liked, but that Mariana didn't appreciate much. "Why bother when we have Grubhub?" she would say. I went back to the gym down the street, not for vanity, but because it made me feel good. I rediscovered the pleasure of reading without interruptions, of listening to an entire album without skipping tracks, of spending a Sunday morning in the park just people watching. I also started writing. Nothing very elaborate, just reflections at the end of the day, loose thoughts, ideas for future projects. It was therapeutic in a way I didn't expect. As if I were organizing not just words but also feelings that had previously been bottled up inside me. One day, Sarah, Liz's friend from the barbecue, messaged me asking if I'd like to get coffee. We had run into each other a few times at events with mutual friends, always with that pleasant tension in the air, but neither of us had taken the next step. Until now. We met at a coffee shop in Greenwich Village on a Saturday afternoon. The conversation flowed naturally, without the pressure of an official first date. We talked about work, movies, places we would like to visit. She had just returned from a work trip to the Amazon, where she participated in an environmental conservation project, and her eyes lit up when she talked about it. "Sorry, I think I'm talking too much," she said, after a long explanation about the jaguars she had seen. "No, it's good to hear someone talk with passion about something," I replied honestly. The coffee turned into an impromptu dinner, the dinner into a walk on the beach. The walk into another week of messages, another date, and another. It was different from anything I had experienced with Mariana. Lighter, less intense, but somehow more true. There were no games, no hidden meanings. Just 2 people discovering, day after day, that they enjoyed each other's company. I didn't tell Sarah about Mariana right away, not because I wanted to hide it, but because that story no longer seemed so important When I finally told her on a night she slept at my apartment for the first time, it was without drama, without resentment. "She hurt you," Sarah commented, lying next to me, her curls spread across the pillow. "Yes. But I think I learned something." "Important." "What?" "That I was worth more than that. That relationships shouldn't be about the fear of losing someone, but about the joy of choosing someone every day." She smiled and rested her head on my chest. "You're deeper than you look, Matt." Looking back, I realized how much I had sacrificed of myself just to keep Mariana satisfied. The constant validation, the emotional labor, the anxiety. It was exhausting to love someone who always seemed to have one foot out the door. Now, peace felt expensive, but it was worth every penny. I didn't need 10 people in line for me. I just needed one person who saw me, chose me, and stayed. But first I had to become that person for myself. One Sunday afternoon, while tidying up some things in the office, I found the box with the last memories of my relationship with Mariana. Movie tickets, a shell we picked up together on a trip to the coast, some printed photos. I stared at those objects for a while, feeling a strange disconnection. It was like flipping through someone else's photo album. I separated the photos that had mutual friends I was still in contact with. The rest I put in a box that I left in the corner of the closet, not out of attachment, but because that story, however painful it had been, was part of what brought me here, part of what transformed me into the person I was becoming. At work, things also started to change. I took on bigger projects, risked ideas I used to keep to myself. Chris, my boss, started giving me more responsibilities, including the possibility of leading a small team next semester. "You're different," he commented after a presentation for an important client, more confident. I smiled, remembering that Dan had said something similar months ago. Maybe it was true. Maybe growth happens that way. Not with fanfare and fireworks, but silently, in small moments of courage, in daily decisions to choose yourself. That night, lying in bed with Sarah sleeping peacefully beside me, I thought about how life comes full circle, about how losses can turn into gains, about how sometimes we need to break to rebuild ourselves stronger, more authentic, more whole. The apartment still had empty walls waiting for paintings, shelves waiting for books, spaces waiting to be filled. Like me, still under construction, still discovering who I was without the shadow of a relationship that diminished me. It wasn't a quick process, it wasn't always pretty, but it was real, and for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. She texted me. I didn't reply. 6 months after leaving the apartment in Brooklyn, I was completely adapted to my new routine. Work was going well, the relationship with Sarah was evolving at a comfortable pace, and my apartment in Brooklyn finally felt like a home. I had bought a new sofa, hung some paintings, and even adopted a cat. A gray stray that appeared meowing at my window on a rainy night, and decided that would be its new address. It was a normal Wednesday. I had just gotten back from the gym, my hair still damp from the shower, when my phone vibrated with a notification. I looked at the screen and felt a strange pang in my stomach when I saw her name. Mariana. The message was simple. "Hi. I've been thinking about you. Hope you're doing well." I stared at those words for a few seconds. It didn't come with an apology. It didn't come with signs of personal growth, just a lazy hand reaching out toward the past. I put my phone on the table and went to make coffee. The cat, which I named Hemingway in honor of the writer, rubbed against my legs, asking for attention. As the water heated, I thought about what that message meant. Why now? What was she hoping for? I drank the coffee on the balcony, watching the city prepare for the night. Lights coming on in other apartments. The heavy traffic on the street. Life happening everywhere, indifferent to the small personal dramas each of us carries. I picked up my phone again and reread the message. "I've been thinking about you." What kind of thoughts? Regret? Nostalgia? Or just the natural curiosity? About an ex who seems to be moving on? For a moment I considered replying. A polite, "I'm doing well, thank you. Hope you are too." harmless, civilized, the kind of thing mature people do after a breakup. But something stopped me. It wasn't anger or resentment. Those feelings had long since dissipated. It was something deeper, more definitive. An understanding that some doors once closed should remain that way. I locked my phone screen and put it aside. I didn't reply that day. Or the next. Eventually, the notification disappeared, swallowed by more recent, more relevant ones for my current life. 2 weeks later, I was having dinner with Sarah at her apartment when my phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Aren't you going to answer?" she asked as she poured more wine. I hesitated. It must be a wrong number, or telemarketing. But something told me it wasn't. I let the phone ring until it went to voicemail. Minutes later, a voicemail notification appeared. I only listened to that message the next day alone in my apartment. It was Mariana. Her voice sounded different, less confident, more hesitant than I remembered. "Hi, Matt. It's me. Sorry to call like this, but, well, you didn't reply to my message, and I thought maybe... Look, I'm going to be in your neighborhood tomorrow for a meeting, and I thought we could get coffee, talk. I know it's been a while, but call me, if you can, okay?" I deleted the message as soon as it ended. Not out of anger or resentment, but because there was nothing in there that needed to be kept. No revelation, no genuine apology, no real acknowledgement of what had happened between us. That afternoon, I was in line for a bagel at the bakery near my apartment when I saw her. Mariana was sitting at an outside table, scrolling on her phone, a cup of coffee in front of her. My first instinct was to turn around and leave before she saw me, but something made me stay. She wasn't there by chance. The meeting in my neighborhood was probably an excuse. She knew I went to that bakery. We had gone there together a few times when we were dating, and she stayed at my old apartment. For a moment our eyes met. She smiled, that smile I knew so well. A smile that had once made my heart race, but that now evoked nothing more than a vague recognition. She raised her hand in a shy greeting. I returned it with a polite nod, got my bagel and left. I didn't stop to talk. I didn't suggest she join me. I simply went on my way, feeling a strange inner peace. That night, Sarah came over for dinner at my apartment. As she told me about her day, about a new project at work, about a documentary she wanted to watch on the weekend, I realized how my life had taken a completely different turn than I had imagined 6 months ago. "Are you listening to me?" she asked, laughing. "Sorry, I was thinking about something for work," I lied. "It's okay, but you seem strange today." I considered telling her about seeing Mariana, about the text, about the call. But what for? All of that belonged to a closed chapter of my life. A chapter that taught me a lot, that transformed me, but that no longer defined who I was or what I wanted. "I'm fine," I replied, kissing her forehead. "Just a little tired." Later, lying in bed with Sarah sleeping next to me, I picked up my phone and saw a new message from Mariana. "I saw you today at the bakery. I wanted to talk to you." I looked at the message for a few seconds, then locked the screen without replying. Not out of rudeness or indifference, but because some conversations don't need to happen. Some stories don't need an epilogue. Some people come into our lives, transform us for better or for worse, and then move on. I put my phone on the nightstand and turned to the other side, getting comfortable to sleep. The cat jumped on the bed and snuggled at my feet, purring softly. Outside, the city continued its tireless rhythm, millions of stories happening simultaneously, millions of people loving, losing, starting over. Let other men get in line. Let her test the waters. Life isn't about how many options you have. It's about who shows up when the lights go out and the bills are due. As for me, I'm no longer waiting to be chosen. I have already chosen myself. And that, perhaps, was the biggest victory of all.